Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 6:02 p.m. on Monday, June 28th, 2021. This virtual public hearing is now considered open. My name is Jennifer Womack. I am an environmental engineer for the North Carolina Division of Air Quality's Mooresville Regional Office. I've been appointed to be the hearing officer for this public hearing by the Director of the Division of Air Quality, Mike Abrazinskis. The purpose of this evening is to receive your comments for consideration in the issuance of a first-time Title V air permit to Enviva Pellets Hamlet, LLC, for a wood pellets manufacturing plant located at 1125 North NC Highway 177 in Hamlet, North Carolina. The focus of this hearing, and the only focus, is to receive public comments on the proposed air quality permit as they relate to the applicability of air quality regulations. The public hearing announcement was published in the Richmond County Daily Journal and on the Division of Air Quality's website on May 29th, 2021. The Division of Air Quality is conducting this public hearing digitally to allow for public participation while protecting public health under current guidance to prevent the spread of COVID-19. During this virtual public hearing, we will be receiving oral comments from those individuals who pre-registered to speak at this event. If you are having technical difficulties with WebEx, you can use the chat feature in WebEx to ask questions or seek assistance. You can also visit the Division of Air Quality's website using the link in the public notice for this hearing for instructions on various ways to connect to WebEx. Joining me for this hearing tonight by WebEx, we have several people from the DAQ's Raleigh Central office, including Zainab Nassif, that's the Division of Air Quality's Public Information Officer, Rahat Ashik, Environmental Engineer with the Rules Development Branch, and Kevin Godwin, Environmental Engineer with the Permitting Section. We also have several people from DAQ's regional offices, including Heather Carter, which is the Fayetteville Regional Supervisor. I want to thank everyone involved in getting this public hearing scheduled and organized, with special thanks to Rahat Sheikh and Zainab Nassif for their expertise in setting up this event. I would also like to thank everyone for their attendance and interest in this virtual public hearing tonight. The comment period for this permit opened May 29th, 2021, and will close on June 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m. In addition to your oral comments tonight, the division is also accepting comments via mail, electronic mail, and by phone to a voicemail box. The email address and phone number for the voicemail box is displayed on your screen. And for those joining us via telephone, I will provide the contact information at the end of the hearing. Copies of the permit application, the permit review, the draft air permit, and other information concerning the Enviva Pellets Hamlet LLC application are available to the public at the following location: the NC Department of Environmental Quality Fayetteville Regional Office, located at 225 Green Street, Suite 714 in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and the Division of Air Quality's Central Office, Permit Section, located at 217 West Jones Street in Raleigh, North Carolina. If you haven't done so and wish to review these materials in person, they are available to you during normal business hours at the locations I just mentioned. However, due to COVID-19 pandemic, an appointment is required. Please call in advance to make an appointment. A copy of the draft air permit and the review permit and the permit review are also available on the Division of Air Quality's website at www.ncair.org in the section titled Public Engagement. The order of events for this hearing are as follows. First, Kevin Godwin of our Raleigh Central office, who reviewed the permit application and wrote the draft permit, will discuss the application and air quality permit. This will be followed by the public comment period. We will receive oral comments from those individuals who pre-registered to speak at this event. This will allow us to have an accurate hearing record. Only those who have pre-registered will be called on to speak. To provide enough time for public comments, this meeting will be conducted in the following manner. All efforts will be made to call speakers in the order of your registrations. Oral statements will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes in order to hear as many citizens as possible. This public hearing is scheduled to adjourn no later than 9 p.m. tonight. We will call the names of each of the pre-registered speakers in order, and our WebEx host will unmute the speaker when it is their turn to speak. We will also announce the name of the next speaker in the queue so they can prepare to provide comments. Please do not start speaking until the WebEx host has indicated that you are able to unmute your microphone. Your time will begin when you have unmuted your microphone. We will keep track of your time and will announce when your 3 minutes have expired. Please respect the time of all those who wish to present oral comments tonight by adhering to the time limits and closing your remarks as quickly as possible once time is up. Cross-examination of the person presenting the comments or me, the hearing officer, will not be allowed. However, as hearing officer, I may ask questions to the presenter for clarification. Questions directed to the Division of Air Quality staff members will not be answered during this hearing. If you have questions for DAQ staff, we can provide you with our contact information so you may contact them after the meeting during normal business hours. After receiving comments this evening, the hearing record will be closed. However, the period for submitting comments does not close until Wednesday, June 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Again, the only focus of this virtual public meeting is the presentation of comments related to air quality issues associated with the new air quality permit for Enviva Pellets Hamlet, LLC, and the applicability of our air quality regulations. Only relevant air quality comments can be considered in my final recommendations to the Division Director. I will now call on Kevin Godwin, Permitting Engineer for the Division of Air Quality, Raleigh Central Office, to discuss the application and air quality permit.
Slide number 1. Enviva Pellets Hamlet, LLC currently holds air permit number 10365R05 issued on July 20th, 2020 for a wood pellets manufacturing plant in
Hi,
Hamlet,
Kevin. Sorry to
County,
interrupt you. You're
Illinois.
a little bit quiet. Would you mind moving a bit closer to your microphone or to your speaker, please?
Sure. How's this?
Yes, I think that's
began
better.
operation on July 24th, 2019. Plant operations consist of log chippers, debarkers, bark hog, green and dry wood hammer mills, rotary dryers, pellet mills, pellet coolers, product loadout operations, and other ancillary activities. The facility is currently classified as a major source under the Title V program and a minor stationary source under the PSD, Prevention of Significant Deterioration, PSD program. Next slide, please. The Title V first-time application was submitted on June 24th, 2020, within 12 months of commencing initial operation of the facility. An application for renewal of permit number 10365R05 with requested modifications was received on November 25th, 2020. These applications are consolidated and require both a 30-day public notice period and a 45-day EPA review. Next slide, please. The plant is currently permitted to produce up to 625 and 11,000 oven-dried tons per year wood pellets, utilizing up to 85% softwood on a 12-month rolling basis. There are no changes to the current permit throughput and percent softwood limits or restrictions in this first-time Title V draft permit. Next slide, please. The following summarizes the changes made to the permit as part of this procedural permit modification. Formatting the permit using current Title V permit structure, including the addition of non-compliance statements throughout and addition of the current set of general conditions. All proposed changes to the permit are addressed in the first-time Title V draft permit application review and the draft permit.
Thank you, Kevin. At this time, we will hear from those who pre-registered to provide oral comments this evening. When your name is called, our WebEx host will enable you to unmute your microphone so you can provide your comments. To ensure our records are complete, please state clearly your name and who you are representing. Your comments will be recorded so please speak loudly and clearly towards your microphone or telephone. Please do not start speaking until you have unmuted your microphone. If you're using a telephone, please press *3 to raise your hand so we can recognize you. It is critically important for the audio clarity of your comments that you turn off any speakers that you may have that can create feedback. If there is significant feedback on your line, we may need to mute your call and attempt to come back to you later. If we call your name but cannot hear you, please check to see if you are muted on the WebEx screen on your computer. If you are having audio issues, please try a different method of audio connection within WebEx or use the Call Me feature to have WebEx call your personal telephone. If we still cannot hear you, we will proceed to the next registered speaker, but we will call your name again at the end of the hearing. I will do my best to pronounce your names correctly and apologize in advance for errors. We will now begin taking oral comments. First commenter, we have Anita Cunningham, followed by Kay Reibold.
Anita, if you have dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. Okay, Anita, I believe this is you. Please go ahead. Anita, your line has been unmuted. Go ahead. You have to unmute on your phone as well. Okay, we'll have to come back to Anita.
Okay, let's go on to Kay Reibold, followed by David Anderson.
Kay, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, this is
Yeah, are you logged in by 2 devices?
I don't think so.
So we'll have to come back to you, Kay, if we can't, if there's an echo. Can you try again?
Okay, let me. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're still getting an echo.
Okay, can you switch your audio to call your cell phone maybe, or perhaps give us your phone number via chat so I can have WebEx call you at the end.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll have to call the next person.
Okay, next we have David Anderson, followed by Amy Fraley.
David, if you called in by phone, please press *3 so we can identify your line to call you. Okay, we'll have to move on.
Okay, next we will have Amy Fraley, followed by Ewell Smith.
Amy, go ahead. Your line has been unmuted.
Okay, thank you. My name is Amy Fraley. I work with Habitat for Humanity of the NC Sandhills, and I am just speaking and expressing my support of the permit application, specifically for the support of Enviva's presence and participation in the community and their clear concern for the community and the residents in and around the area. We have been incredibly impressed with their support of neighborhoods and communities, especially those at risk, and ways that they've supported the Richmond County area. So we are just expressing our support of this application. Thanks.
Next we will have Yule Smith, followed by Jessica Marcus.
Mr.
Can you hear me?
Smith, yes, go ahead.
Okay. This is Yule Smith. I'm the executive director of the Carolina Loggers Association. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here. We represent we have about 450 members of loggers across the state of North Carolina. And we're in support of the Title V permit for the Hamlet facility. We have been very busy this past year, like every other association representing their members. And we worked very hard to lead an initiative to secure logger relief dollars for loggers because the impacts of COVID to the industry. And that has a lot to do with the fact that our industry is oftentimes considered the most fragile link in the supply chain. Our loggers run on 1% to 3% margin, so every single market is vital to them. It's critical to them. And when the loggers go away, that impacts the entire logging business, which is a huge business to the state of North Carolina. It's a $33.6 billion business to this state. And I want to add one more thing. Our guys are very tuned into better management practices and so forth for the sustainability of our forests. And if you look at the state of North Carolina, this is something I think this state has a lot to be proud of. The first forestry school in the United States was the Biltmore Forest School in 1898, over 100 years ago. Today, there are 14 billion trees in this state. We have more trees in North Carolina than we did 100 years ago. I'm going to say that again. We have more trees in the state of North Carolina than there were 100 years ago. And North Carolina led the way for sustainability across the United States. So we support this initiative, and this initiative, the Title V permit is very important, not just to our loggers. It's also important to that local community, and it's important to the entire economy of North Carolina. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Jessica Marcus, followed by Liv Hutchby.
Jessica, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. And for the opportunity to make comments at this hearing. Again, my name is Jessica Marcus. I'm the Vice President of Policy for the U.S. Industrial Pellet Association. USIPA is a nonprofit trade association based in Richmond, Virginia that promotes sustainability and safety practices within the U.S. wood energy industry. Our membership includes large-scale producers of sustainable wood biomass across the Southeast, and Enviva is one of our founding members. As you consider Enviva's permit application, I do want to emphasize that leading scientific authorities and real-world data confirm the positive benefits of wood biomass for the climate, for our environment, and for rural economies like the Hamlet community. According to the world's foremost climate experts, wood bioenergy limits global warming by replacing fossil fuels and keeping our forests intact. That is the conclusion of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is widely considered to be the global authority on climate science. The IPCC makes it clear that forests and forest products have an essential role to play in mitigating climate change. In its August 2019 special report on land and climate, the IPCC indicated that bioenergy and sustainable forestry are critical components in keeping the Earth's warming below 1.5 C. Specifically, the IPCC stated in that report that sustainable forest management, which aims at storing carbon while yielding timber, fiber, and bioenergy, will produce the best results for the climate. Wood biomass also benefits the environment by strengthening the market for forestry. It provides additional income for landowners to help them keep planting trees versus converting their land for other uses. It's because of these strong markets that data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture shows that forest inventory and forested area in the U.S. Southeast have steadily increased since the mid-1950s, and forest carbon stocks have more than doubled. Wood biomass is a meaningful but very small part of the overall forest economy. It accounts for just 3% of all wood harvested each year across the Southeast. It's easy to see how our forests remain stable, productive, and healthy, even as they provide a steady supply of renewable forest products, including biomass. And finally, the biomass industry provides a vital source of economic support for communities like Hamlet. Enviva has already invested more than $160 million into their Hamlet facility and directly spends $120 million per year in operations costs on items such as wood fiber, maintenance, trucking, and cleaning. The Hamlet plant currently supports about 75 direct jobs, as well as over 200 additional indirect jobs in the region in industries like logging, transportation, and contracting. And these are well-paying jobs. The average wage at the plant is 60% higher than the county average. Enviva estimates it creates a total annual economic impact in the region of approximately $200 million per year. The science and the real-world data show us that an approved permit at the Hamlet facility would allow Enviva to continue displacing coal, growing more trees, fighting climate change, and providing jobs and economic investment for the local community. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Liv Hutchby, followed by Yana Kravtsova.
Lib, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
It says, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Wonderful. I am not in support of this permit. My name is Lib Hutchby. I am a member of Triangle Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and a volunteer with 350 Triangle, Clean Water for North Carolina, and several other organizations whose purpose it is to educate the public about the reality of tree communities, water contamination, air pollution, and the need for protective legislation. Corporations are not people. People breathe the air. Why would we be surprised that more and more young people are joining the Extinction Rebellion? Because they understand that to cut trees is to cut the life of their air away from them. As one who was reared in the industrial city of High Point, I know what it's like for products to be produced in a small city only to have the product shipped overseas. Then the whole business moved overseas. I know what it's like for family members to develop health problems, and 50 years later, the city is struggling economically while many former workers had cancer and died. When the Department of Air Quality denies the air permit to Enviva, thousands will breathe freer, be healthier, and thousands of acres of life-giving trees will be saved. Enviva is moving entirely too fast, has already proven to be reckless and irresponsible, cutting 164 acres of trees per day, and has shipped 99% of the product to Europe. Looking at Enviva's website, it's very confusing. Enviva's website even says that climate change is the greatest challenge of our time. However, they have not dealt, as you can see, with the fact that in their images and their messages are very confusing and contradictory. To the Department of Air Quality, I say, if you authorize this permit for Enviva, you will be in violation of a moral principle to do no harm. If you authorize this permit for Enviva, you will be legislating suffering. Enviva's claims suggest that they lie. Their non-compliance at all of their other locations suggests that they are irresponsible, unresponsive to expected regulations, and basically are in a huge rush to cut down the trees before some authority, like DAQ, puts a stop to it. Corporations like Enviva have taught the public not to trust them because their messages are not backed up with reality. You'll see in their website, you don't see people running through stumps of fields. You see them running through forest. They recognize that the health of running through a forest, walking in trees, actually lowers our blood pressure and relieves stress, but they are indeed cutting 164 acres a day.
Please wrap up your comments so we can move on to the next speaker.
Wood pellets create emissions superior to coal, yet Enviva claims they want to displace coal. Enviva is killing trees daily while they say they want to grow more trees. Enviva says it fights climate change, yet it deliberately pollutes the communities where they operate, creating vast space for hurricane winds to build force, destroying water storage and ecosystems, and creating disease in the humans that breathe the toxic air. Thank you for giving me this time to speak.
We will now hear from Yana Kravtsova, followed by Chris Brown.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yana Kravtsova, and I lead Enviva's environmental and public affairs team. We applied for this permit last year and worked with the North Carolina DEQ to answer any and all questions on this permit application. And we appreciate the agency holding this public hearing to hear from the community as the next important step. As our community may know, our plant has gone through an extensive permitting review and public process, which was completed in winter of 2019 for a construction permit with enhanced air emission controls, making the facility a synthetic minor source for PSD upon startup. All the new equipment and the air emission control technology has been installed, and the plant is in the process of completing controls of its dry hammer mills before the permit deadline. Upon completion, this will be one of the most controlled wood pellet plants in North Carolina and the United States, if not the world. The air emissions from our manufacturing process are well below the required EPA standards that may present any risk to public health. And that means the facility does not present any public health issues and will continue to operate in compliance and exceeding environmental standards set by the Clean Air Act, National Ambient Air Quality Standards, and North Carolina state regulations. Our manufacturing process is simple. We take water out of wood and we do not add any chemicals to our process or pellets. This Title V permit application contains no significant operational or other material changes to the plant. It also requires us to test the plant air emissions at least once on an annual basis with an expert third party and publicly disclose those test results for approval by North Carolina DEQ. Earlier this year, North Carolina DEQ performed a non-site inspection of the facility and environmental records, which found the facility to be in compliance with all permit conditions. That inspection report is publicly available. We want to thank you, the community, for participating in today's hearing, and we'll look forward to completing this permitting process and continuing to be part of this community. Thank you.
Next is Chris Brown, followed by Paul Pereira.
Chris, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. I'm Chris Brown, Enviva's Mid-Atlantic Senior Community Relations Manager. I support this permit since it reaffirms Enviva's commitment to operating its Hamlet facility with the best air quality control technology possible. I have the honor of working closely with community leaders who share a common goal of improving the lives of others in their community. Even before the first pellet was produced at Hamlet, Enviva's community efforts were underway, and those partnerships are still going strong. Our first partnership is with Habitat for Humanity of the North Carolina Sandhills. Enviva is a sponsor of Dobbins Heights Revitalization Project that assists homeowners with constructions of ramps, decks, and/or porches. Enviva and associates, including myself, have spent time working on several of these projects alongside one of Habitat's true superstars, Rick Ford. This fall, Enviva associates will be volunteers on an Enviva-sponsored house build project. We are extremely excited for this opportunity. Enviva also considers its support of Richmond County's Backpack Pals program as one of its most important outreach activities. A supporter since 2018, Enviva salutes Pastor Cruz and his all-volunteer team at Backpack Pals for serving 700 students each week during the academic year. Enviva is also committed to education in the community. In addition to our sponsorship of Richmond County High School, we've partnered with June Gadsden at New Bethel Church in Dobbins Heights to create an after-school learning center with the donation of computers. We also work closely with Richmond County Community College on workforce development projects and job fairs. President Dale McGinnis is a tremendous asset to our community. Over the past year, Enviva has collaborated with Pastors Linda and Mordecai Ross of Faith Assembly Church to sponsor food distributions in Dobbins Heights. Last Thanksgiving, we teamed up to distribute turkeys and accessories at the Dobbins Heights Community Center. We again partnered this May on a similar adventure. Enviva is also engaged with Richmond County United Way as a company sponsor of the program, and I serve on its board of directors. We care about our communities. Our performance over the past 3 years demonstrates this. I encourage everyone to take the time to ask some of our existing partners about Enviva. I am sure they will tell you that Enviva associates are invested in Richmond County. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Next, we have Paul Pereira, followed by Deborah David.
Paul, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. Paul, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line. So your line may be unmuted. Okay, we'll move on to the next person.
We'll go to Deborah David, followed by Alton Perry.
Deborah, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line. Is this Deborah?
Yes. Okay,
go ahead.
Okay, my name is Deborah David. I'm with the Concerned Citizens of Richmond County. I live down the street from Enviva. And I want to ask DEQ to require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan to mitigate the impact that harmful dust pollution is having on the surrounding community, and incorporate that plan into Enviva's Title V permit. Thank you.
Next, we have Alton Perry, followed by Brianna Cunliffe.
Alton, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can unmute you. Alton, your line has been unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Alton Perry. I'm the director of the Sustainable Forestry and Land Retention Project and Roanoke Electric Cooperative in Northeastern North Carolina. We have had a partnership with Enviva for 5 years now, assisting landowners with their forest management, from technical assistance and providing financial assistance to allow our landowners to improve their forest health, their forest economy. So I am in agreement that Enviva receives this permit to continue its work.
Next, we have Brianna Cunliffe, followed by Joshua Davenport.
Brianna, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am in agreement with Ms. David, and that I am here today asking DEQ to require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan to mitigate the effect that harmful dust is having on the surrounding community. I'm 21 years old. I was born and raised in North Carolina, and my parents lived in a place that has a story a lot like Hamlet, where vulnerable communities' daily lives can be affected by pollution, dust, and odors from plants down the road. Residents who live near this Enviva facility have really been severely impacted by this dust. PM 2.5 and air pollutants like this tend to make illnesses like asthma and respiratory illnesses much worse. Enviva has described the donations that it's made to the community, but these are mere drops in the bucket compared to the profits they make off of this community. The least they can do is invest in making sure that they have a robust fugitive dust control plan. The Department of Environmental Quality is often the last line of defense that communities have to protect them from polluting industries. It is the responsibility of this DEQ to respond to the community concerns that are expressed and require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan. Thank you.
Next, we will have Joshua Davenport, followed by Jack Spruill.
Josh, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Davenport, and I'm with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I want to focus my comments tonight on what matters most, serious health impacts to the local community. Although the Title V permits are an important mechanism to ensure that facilities are complying with the Clean Air Act, the draft Title V permit for the Enviva Hamlet falls short on the issue of fugitive dust. The draft permit's fugitive dust requirements need to be strengthened by incorporating a site-specific dust plan into the permit. As you have heard from some citizens here today, the fugitive dust is a major concern for those living close to the mill. Fugitive dust at wood pellet mills comes from several parts of the manufacturing process, including the wood handling, storage piles, conveyor transfer points, yard dust, haul road dust, and engine exhaust. Inhalation of fugitive dust can cause serious health problems, including damage to the lungs and respiratory system. More specifically, irritation to the eyes, nose, and throat, coughing, difficulty breathing, bronchitis, asthma, and may even lead to cancer. Neighbors of pellet mills have spoken out repeatedly about the negative impacts that dust from these facilities is having on their health and well-being. In fact, dust complaints are common for pellet mills throughout North Carolina and the rest of the country. In North Carolina, DEQ required the Enviva Ahoskie facility to put in place a fugitive dust plan after receiving significant complaints from the community. Those same dust complaints have persisted from Enviva mill operations in Northampton and Sampson. During public hearings for the expansion of those in Enviva facilities, residents complained about fugitive dust coating their homes, cars, and significantly affecting the enjoyment of their property. North Carolina's regulations require a fugitive dust control plan if there are more than 2 substantive complaints made within a 12-month period. If the community's comments at this public hearing do not constitute a substantive complaint, then DEQ needs to inform the community of what does. Moreover, a fugitive dust plan is particularly important for this facility because of its proximity to Dobbins Heights, a predominantly Black community, and other communities already exposed to numerous sources of pollution. Notably, according to DEQ Environmental Justice Tool, the health outcome causes of death in Richmond County are higher than the state averages for all causes of death. In Richmond County, hospitalizations due to asthma are higher than the state average. SCLC calls on DEQ to require Enviva to implement a fugitive dust control plan at the Hamlet facility. DEQ should utilize this opportunity when developing Hamlet's first-time Title V permit to listen to the community and require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan, which is then incorporated into the Title V permit. Thank you.
Next, we have Jack Spruill, followed by Jane Barnett.
Jack, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Yes, I am Jack Spruill calling from Hempstead, Pender County. I'm making my comments as a concerned citizen, as well as the owner of 2 woodland tracts in Washington County. These tracts are natural forests with strong diversity of hardwood, upland, and wetland tree species. My central point in my comments is that it is well past time for our Department of Environmental Quality to stop looking simply at air quality issues in the immediate area of the Hamlet plant and all 4 of Enviva's plants in North Carolina. This matter cries out for DEQ to evaluate the cumulative environmental impact and the cumulative environmental justice impact at this Hamlet plant and the other 3 Enviva plants in our state. DEQ must stop taking a silo approach to environmental quality at the fences of these plants. Now, I'm sure that the good people in our Division of Air Quality on this call are already saying to themselves, that's all well and good, Jack, but that's not our job. I say it's everybody's job at DEQ, just like it is for all caring citizens on this call, to be very concerned with the obvious material, cumulative environmental damage and environmental injustice that this industry is imposing on us. Thank you for listening.
Next, we have Jane Barnett, followed by Noble Smith.
Jane, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Jane Barnett of Moore County, North Carolina, a retired high school math teacher and a student of the climate crisis. These are my thoughts about why the Enviva plants should not receive a Title V first-time permit, establishing it as one of the state's largest emitters of air pollutants. Several aspects of the Enviva wood pellet plants are problematic. About the urgent need for worldwide climate actions, the UK and the European Union are using biomass to meet their goals for the Paris Climate Agreement. Scientists study the use of biomass that should be combined with the still undeveloped process of carbon capture and burying. Sending them several million tons of North Carolina wood pellets yearly is premature. Secondly, clear-cutting 50 acres of valuable carbon sinks daily reduces the CO2 capture immensely. Old-growth trees, many hardwoods, and wetland trees cannot be replanted and grow quickly, taking decades to replace those that are cut. And thirdly, the amount of energy expended and emissions caused by harvesting, transporting, processing, heating the wood chips to make pellets, transporting them to ports, shipping them across the Atlantic, and burning the pellets for power in Europe are very detrimental to the planet's goals of reducing carbon emissions this decade. But from the side of Enviva plant's operations and the permit being considered here immediately impact our state. Demands for wood pellets in Europe are growing for their climate strategy, so the deforestation of North Carolina will be dramatic. Forests regrow slowly, pasture lands and development can replace them. Carbon sequestration, wildlife habitats, and natural flood control do matter. Secondly, the plants are located in economically disadvantaged communities and result in environmental racism. The plant in Hamlet is near a huge railroad hub, a power plant, other industries with air permits, a solid waste disposal site, and Superfund sites. The local citizens have complained of the excessive dust, noise, and pollution affecting their quality of life. The processes the plant uses emits particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, nitrogen oxides, and carbon monoxide. Controls for these hazardous air pollutants are needed in North Carolina, not permits allowing a larger emitter of pollutants. And fires at several Enviva plants in recent years and violations of the current air permits due to those or equipment failures have added to emissions of the hazardous substances. The health
Please wrap up your comment so we can move on to the next speaker.
The health of our citizens with life expectancies reduced by respiratory illnesses, cancer, and heart attacks should be motivating factors in the decision about permits for the Enviva plants. Thank you.
Next, we have Noble Smith, followed by Pauline Endo.
Hello, my name is Noble Smith. I'm here on behalf of the Wanaya River Alliance and the Lumber Riverkeeper to voice my opposition to the Title V permit for the Enviva Hamlet wood pellet plant. The main concern that I want to voice is that this permit, if issued, would be inadequate because the environmental analysis does not include a cumulative impact analysis of the area. As mentioned before, this Enviva plant is closely located to a community that is already suffering from negative health impacts due to the high proximity of major polluters in the area. And we believe that having no cumulative impact report or analysis does no justice to the people living in this area. As mentioned before, the permit currently is lacking a fugitive dust plan. And on top of this, there is another biochar facility that has been recently permitted to operate right down the street. So there are a number of polluters that will be affecting this community, and the current permit has no analysis of how those polluters will interact and have negative effects on the community. Thank you.
Next, we have Pauline Endo, followed by Sarah Hallman.
Pauline, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. Thank you. Pauline, if you've dialed in by, okay.
Yes.
Is this
I'm
Pauline?
here.
Okay, please go ahead.
My name is Pauline Endo. I volunteer with the Southern Forest Conservation Coalition and live in Wilmington, where 2 wood pellet domes owned by Enviva are located at the state port. These domes store up to 90 metric tons of wood pellets delivered from Enviva plants in Sampson and Richmond counties. I speak tonight because since the domes arrived in Wilmington 5 years ago, I never miss a chance to testify before DEQ, as I have followed the rapid, damaging expansion of the pellet industry in North Carolina. The industry logged 300,000 acres in our state between 2013 and 2020. As alarming as the loss of our forests are and forest services, carbon sequestration, flood control, habitat, water filtration, and tourism, even more alarming is evidence that the emissions from pellet plants are producing dangerous levels of particulate matter and noxious chemicals that exacerbate health outcomes in communities of environmental injustice near the Richmond County plant. An adult breathes in 11,000 liters of air a day. Obviously, a resident living near the pellet plant will ingest dust that escapes mitigation for air pollution. In addition to the Enviva plant, there are other industries that people have mentioned tonight in the county that produce harmful emissions, resulting in millions spent on asthma and COPD hospitalizations every year. What is being done to stop this egregious pellet industry and restore standing forests in North Carolina to their former utility, while at the same time saving the lives of people living close to pellet plants? Time and again at the hearings and tonight, residents and environmental groups have begged DEQ to protect at-risk communities. Tonight, I ask, as others have, that DEQ develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan to protect the Richmond County community. To remind, in 1972, an amendment to the North Carolina Constitution empowered state and local governments to protect our air and water from pollution. DEQ has an opportunity to uphold this amendment, setting a precedent for protecting the air surrounding the Richmond County plant. How? Making a policy intervention by implementing a fugitive dust control plan that can be incorporated in Enviva's Title V permit is a crucial step forward. DEQ, the onus is yours. Thank you.
Next is Sarah Hallman, followed by Dale McInnes.
Sarah, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for providing time for me to speak today, and thank you to those who spoke before me. My name is Sarah Heilman, and I am speaking on behalf of the North Carolina Sierra Club and over 110,000 of our members and supporters who care about air quality, forest preservation, and the health and safety of our communities. The North Carolina Sierra Club strongly opposes the wood pellet industry's apparent disregard for the health of our communities and their destruction of our state's forests. We agree with many of the speakers you've heard from today in asking that you require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan to mitigate the impact that harmful dust pollution is having on the surrounding community and incorporate that plan into Enviva's Title V permit. Enviva has time and time again incited fines for failure to control dust, which residents living near Enviva wood pellet facilities across the state say coats their cars, their homes, and gets in their eyes and noses. Dust has a well-documented impact on respiratory health, leading to conditions like asthma. Richmond County already ranks poorly, 93rd out of 100 counties, in health outcomes. This community cannot afford to fall victim to yet another environmental injustice. DEQ is the last line of defense for local residents who are living with the impacts of your decisions to construct and expand this plant. The constant dust and noise generated by Enviva are polluting the local community, degrading the quality of life for those living near the facility. If the state is going to allow these facilities to operate near our communities, the industry must be held to the strictest standard of air quality for the health of North Carolinians and the environment. Please prioritize the health and safety of our communities by developing and incorporating a fugitive dust management plan into this Title V permit. That's all. Thank you.
Next, we have Dale McInnes, followed by John Hatcher.
Dale, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line. Dale, if you've, okay.
Yes.
Dale, is this you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. I'm Dale McInnes. I'm president at Richmond Community College, whose main campus is in Hamlet. We also have another facility in the city proper. And I just want to comment on how I believe Enviva has fulfilled the promises and the commitments they made 3 years ago when they began construction in terms of not only their service and investment in the community, but also the stewardship they provided to the environment through the strict adherence to the permit and the collaboration they've had with our local timber industry. I think the investment they've made has paid huge dividends for our community. On a personal note, I'm a lifelong resident of Richmond County. I've lived here all my life, and my campus is less than 5 miles as a crow flies from their plant, and my house is less than 5 miles as a crow flies. And neither I nor anyone at my college has made any complaints of any impact from the plant or its emissions. So I appreciate the role DEQ plays in ensuring the quality of our air and the role that Enviva is playing in adhering to and complying to the permit. And I would urge its approval and support Enviva moving forward. Thank you so much.
Next, we have John Hatcher, followed by Mark Barker.
John, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Dr. John Hatcher. I'm the Executive Director for the North Carolina Forestry Association. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our support of Enviva's Title V permit application for its facility in Hamlet, North Carolina. I'll be submitting a written version of these comments tomorrow by email. Enviva is one of 4,000 NCFA members that play a critically important role in North Carolina's $34.9 billion forest economy, providing 75 plus direct jobs and more than 200 indirect jobs for local citizens while providing a much needed market for forest landowners. Enviva's commitment to sustainability practices ensures that our state's forest resources will provide clean air, clean water, abundant wildlife habitat, and good paying jobs for generations to come. Enviva is also committed to being a good corporate citizen. They invest in local schools and charitable nonprofits, and they are committed to working with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality to ensure that they are in compliance with all state and federal laws. In closing, thank you for the opportunity for the North Carolina Forestry Association to speak in our support of Enviva's Title V permit application for its facility in Hamlet. Thank you.
Next, we have Mark Barker, followed by Dr. Robert Parr.
Mark, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Mark Barker. I'm on staff with the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. I'm submitting comments on behalf of Brettel and our members in Richmond County and North Carolina. We respectfully request that this draft air permit be denied because this facility will significantly impact the air quality of the surrounding community. This permit would affect the public health of an environmental justice community, which has been dealt an excessive air pollution burden. In addition, this facility has failed to meet the PSD avoidance conditions, which are listed in the permit. The DAQ draft environmental justice report outlines various tools which were used to examine the community impacted by Enviva. Most of these tools demonstrated that the immediate area fits the environmental justice criteria. DAQ dances around these findings in its conclusion, yet does acknowledge a need to increase outreach efforts. However, the EJ report neglects very important aspects of environmental justice: fair treatment and same degree of protection. Continuing to permit toxic facilities time and time again does not use fair treatment and does not offer the same degree of protection for this community. We believe that additional areas of 2-mile and 5-mile radii should also be explored. In addition, the community is categorized as a high vulnerability area based on the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. This CVI helps officials prepare and respond to emergency events, such as exposure to dangerous chemicals. Although the annual throughput will remain the same, we have concerns about increasing the hourly throughput by 50% from 80 oven-dried tons to 120. To comply with this increase, we believe the facility would need to restrict its operation about 59% of the time, or it would not be in compliance. We also inquire if this new short-term increase of 50% throughput increases any of the emission rates used in the PSD modeling, which DAQ received in January 2014. We are especially concerned about the mention of the notice of violation in the statement of basis report. DAQ stated that in January, $11,000 civil penalty was assessed in Enviva for a violation of avoidance conditions. We were unable to locate this NOV on the DEQ website in the list of reviewable documents for this permit. This NOV is extremely important as this facility uses and DAQ granted the use of avoidance of condition to avoid meeting more stringent PSD requirements. We also do not see a compliance plan for this violation listed in the permit. Since Enviva cannot meet the avoidance requirements, Enviva should not be granted a Title V permit based on these less stringent conditions they cannot meet. Enviva must be required to meet all the PSD requirements. We respectfully request that this draft air permit be denied. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Robert Parr, followed by John Wagner.
Dr. Parr, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
My name is Dr. Robert Parr, and I'm a retired specialist in emergency medicine. Air quality is a leading cause of poor health and loss of quality of life. In this regard, Richmond County is not a healthy county. Richmond County is ranked among the least healthy counties in North Carolina, 87 for length of life, 93 for health outcomes, and 95 for quality of life. If you live in Richmond County, your life expectancy is 4 years shorter than the North Carolina average. For those of us living, that's from June 2017 until June 2021. That's a lot of lost living. Cardiac disease, cancer, cerebrovascular disease, kidney disease, and liver disease are significantly higher in Richmond County than in surrounding counties. These health statistics are not just numbers. They represent Richmond County families unduly overburdened with healthcare costs, chronic disease, loss of quality of life, and shortened lifespans. To make matters worse, industrial emissions in Richmond County are increasing. From 2013 to 2018, criteria air pollutants have increased by 148%, and toxic air and hazardous air pollutants have increased by 84%. And this does not include the additional air emissions from Enviva, which opened in 2019. By locating the Hamlet plant in a community with poor health outcomes and multiple cumulative emission sources, Enviva's control technology and compliance must be of the highest order. Enviva has been fined for multiple air quality violations in Sampson and Hertford counties, and Enviva has experienced 7 fires in recent years. So more of the same promises with negative outcomes is not an option. With regard to the specific air quality permit, fugitive dust contains particulate matter, heavy metals, and toxic aromatic hydrocarbons, which have been shown to cause increased respiratory symptoms, decreased lung function, aggravated asthma, irregular heartbeats, low birth weight, cancer, heart attacks, and premature death. I ask that NCDAQ require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan to mitigate the impact of harmful dust pollution on the people of Richmond County. The North Carolina Institute of Medicine Richmond County Health Profile states, quote, "It should be noted that exposure to other people's secondhand smoke can cause the risk of heart disease even for non-smokers. The air emissions and fugitive dust from the Enviva Hamlet plant are industrial secondhand smoke that the neighboring community is impossible to control or avoid. This responsibility falls to the NC Department of Air Quality at this critical time." Thank you.
Next, we have John Wagner, followed by Rachel Velez.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I urge North Carolina's Department of Air Quality to deny Enviva's Title V permit. Two especially important air issues. One is sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide emissions from the combustion sources at the Enviva Hamlet plant are not required under this draft permit to be monitored, recorded, or reported to DAQ. Yet, sulfur dioxide is a known toxin produced by Enviva's facilities. Second is particulates. Enviva produces massive amounts of PM 2.5, and DAQ hasn't required fugitive dust control plans. The health risks from PM 2.5 have been thoroughly documented in scientific research, and there's serious threats to pregnant women, fetal development, infants, children, and the elderly. During the current COVID-19 pandemic, there's substantial research that it's established that exposure to PM 2.5 dust increases serious lung damage and health risks from COVID. And there are additional major reasons that this permit should be denied. One is environmental justice. The cumulative environmental damage to a largely minority and low-income Dobbins Heights community, to Hamlet, and to Richmond County perpetuates and will grossly worsen the existing environmental injustice of clustering toxic industries and Superfund sites near these communities. And finally, climate. Climate and hurricane and storm damage are serious issues that DEQ is thoroughly aware of. Cutting North Carolina's forests so that Europe can burn wood pellets will worsen our climate crisis by supporting an energy source that is worse than coal. Enviva's vast clear cutting of eastern North Carolina's forests, wetlands, and bottomland woodlands will increase the risks of flood and storm damage. My comments today are brief because I'll be submitting written comments with documentation and scientific references. Please deny Enviva's permit. Thank you.
Next, we have Rachel Velez, followed by Rob Ransom.
Rachel, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead. Rachel, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead. Okay, we'll have to come back to Rachel.
Next, we have Rob Ransom, followed by Michael Walters.
Rob, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can unmute your line. Rob, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. Okay, we'll have to come back.
Next we have Michael Walters, followed by Sherry White Williamson.
Okay. Michael, is this you?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Michael Walters. I'm a legacy landowner in Eastern North Carolina and a third-generation forest products industry family. We have seen the and I called tonight and to express my support in Enviva's Title 5 permit application for this Hamlet facility. I've heard a lot of comments tonight about forest products and the cutting of our forest in North Carolina. Our forest is a renewable resource with young, healthy forests being planted every day, trees being planted every day. We have all been good stewards of our land. My family's been owners of land for 7 generations here in North Carolina. We take good care of our property. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a market for our forest products, materials, and Enviva has been a good corporate partner, not only in the community, but also within the forest products community. It's been a great corporate partner in Richmond County and the state of North Carolina. So I asked for the Department of Environmental Quality to issue this permit in Hamlet, North Carolina. Thank you.
Next, we have Sherry White Williamson, followed by Christine Ellis.
Sherry, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Sherry White Williamson, Environmental Justice Policy Director at the North Carolina Conservation Network. I'm speaking tonight to oppose the proposed Title V permit for the Enviva pellets plant in Hamlet. The granting of this application is the wrong answer for this community and only continues to adversely impact a community already suffering from multiple polluting sources. Currently, North Carolina has 4 Enviva wood pellet plants, all in low-income and minority communities. This plant is another example of why continuing to permit these facilities is a bad idea. The community closest to the plant, the Dobbins Heights municipality, is predominantly Black, and Richmond County has one of the worst health outcomes in the state. Like so many other low-income communities and communities of color across the state, there is not merely a problem with one source of pollution, there are cumulative impacts from multiple sources. Citizens here are exposed to plastics manufacturers, solid waste landfills, inactive hazardous sites, steel fabricators, a biochar facility, and concentrated animal feeding operations. I ask you, how much should a community be expected to bear? When is the state agency, DEQ, that is supposed to protect North Carolina citizens going to do its job and protect the most vulnerable of its citizens? It appears that the answer is never when it comes to this community and so many others like it across the state. Study after study has shown the detrimental health effects to people in communities like Dobbins Heights who are exposed to cumulative impacts. A recent Environmental Integrity Project report found that in 2017, at least a third of the wood pellet plants surveyed, 7 out of 21, violated their permit limits by releasing illegal amounts of pollution. Further, more than half of the plants, 11 out of 21, either failed to keep emissions below legal limits or failed to install required pollution controls. Of particular note is the fact that North Carolina's Enviva facilities were found to be the most egregious operations in terms of air quality violations and compliance with planned emissions control. DAQ shouldn't reward an emitter with a record of violations by letting them bump up their emissions to a Title V permit. Instead, Enviva should remain at its current level until it can demonstrate good behavior. I ask you, when will this practice of discounting communities like Dobbins Heights end and the state start to protect the health and welfare of all of its citizens? I implore you to reject the application for a Title V air permit. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Christine Ellis, followed by Marty Butler.
Christine, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Christine Ellis, Deputy Director with Winyah Rivers Alliance. Communities local to wood pellet production facilities are impacted by air pollutants, including fine particulates. And these communities rely on the permitting and enforcement agencies to ensure that their health is not compromised. Negative impacts from air pollution also occur in natural ecosystems, negatively impacting our waters, our forests, and other natural ecosystems and the benefits they provide locally and statewide. EPA researchers provide the critical science to develop and implement outdoor air regulations under the Clean Air Act and put new tools and information in the hands of air quality managers and regulators to protect the air we breathe. This month, EPA announced that it is reconsidering the previous administration's decision to retain the particulate matter national ambient air quality standards, which were last strengthened in 2012. Because available scientific evidence and technical information indicate that the current standards may not be adequate to protect public health and welfare as required by the Clean Air Act, EPA is reconsidering the December 2020 decision. EPA Administrator Michael Regan stated that the most vulnerable among us are most at risk from exposure to particulate matter. And that's why it's so important we take a hard look at these standards that haven't been updated in 9 years. He went on to say that EPA is committed to ensuring this review and other upcoming standards reviews to reflect the latest science and public health data. Residents of Richmond County are vulnerable, experiencing poor health outcomes likely due in part to the cumulative impacts of multiple polluting industries. Those are some of the reasons why we encourage DEQ to require more stringent dust controls, to ensure that dust is better controlled at the source, to protect residents living near the facility, and to protect the natural communities nearby. Therefore, please, DEQ, require Enviva to develop and implement a fugitive dust control plan and mitigate harmful dust pollution in anticipation of a stricter standard in the future. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Marty Butler.
Marty, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. Thank you. Marty, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. Okay. At this time, Jennifer, we would have to move on to the next speakers. I believe Kay and Rachel were able to get their audios straightened out, so we can move down the list.
Okay. Can we start at the top with Anita Cunningham, if she is available, followed by Kay Reibold?
Anita, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you.
Okay, let's move on to Kay Reibold,
Okay.
followed by David Anderson.
Kay, if you would turn off your computer speakers and you can go ahead and make your statements.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Okay, your line has been unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hello, my name's Kay Rebold, and I live in Raleigh. I'm a member of the North to Protect the People and Places We Live, North Carolina, APPLE. I'm here today to reject the Title V air quality permit for the Enviva wood pellet plant, North Carolina. As we've already heard from several folks testifying tonight, have already suffered too much from dirty industry in the area. Both the municipality of Dobbins Heights are already home to plastics manufacturer, waste landfills, and active hazardous sites, steel fabricators, bioturf, and industrial animal operations. DAQ continues to fail to identify injustices of its permitting activities for these air polluting facilities in neighboring Dobbins Heights. The cumulative air impacts of all facilities in this area have not been addressed by DAQ. Why is DAQ of impact? The Enviva site would be a massive emitter of particulate matter, and other toxic and carcinogenic pollutants. Sulfur dioxide emission sources at the Enviva Hamlet site are not required under this draft permit recorded or reported to DAQ. This is not acceptable. The terrible health impacts these emissions have on the residents in the community. They cause bronchitis, wheezing, phlegm, and asthma attacks. Sulfur dioxide is cardiovascular disease. Enviva has a record of violating its permits by release of pollution. Hamlet is already in the 70th to 90th traffic proximity, Superfund site proximity, ozone, PM2, and air toxic risks among minority and low-income communities. DA consider cumulative impact and deny the air quality permit for Enviva. Thank you.
We will briefly try to reconnect with David Anderson, followed by Paul Pereira.
David, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3.
Okay.
We'll have to move on.
We have Paul Pereira, followed by Rachel Velez.
Paul, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line.
Okay. Next, we have Rachel Velez, followed by Rob Ransom.
Rachel, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead. Rachel, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead. Rachel, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Has she called in by phone, it looks like?
Yeah, we were able to get in touch with her by phone. Okay.
Can you guys?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Rachel? We'll have to come back to her.
Next, we have Rob Ransom, followed by Marty Butler.
Rob, if you've dialed in by phone, please press *3 so I can identify your line to unmute you. We'll have to move on.
We will now try Marty Butler, followed by one more attempt to Rachel Velez.
Marty or Rachel, is this you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I'm Marty Butler. I'm management analyst in the economic developer for Richmond County. I'm calling to support Enviva in their permit application. I have worked with Enviva since 2013 when they were looking for sites across the Southeast. Their facility has been in operation since 2019 and has operated in compliance with all environmental regulations. We as a county and a community have not seen or heard of negative effects from their facility. As you've heard, Enviva participates and support in numerous partnerships and civic organizations throughout the community. In particular, Dobbins Heights has been a topic of conversation. They have hired individuals from that area as well as partner in a lot of different projects. In closing, with no environmental issues, and this company adheres to all local, federal, and state regulations and guidelines, I would encourage DEQ to move forward and permit the Title V application for Enviva. Thank you.
We'll do one more try to see if we can connect with Rachel Velez. Does not appear.
We are trying to get in touch with her. Just give me 1 second. Try again. Yeah, at this time, we are still not able to connect with her. We'll keep on trying, but we'll have to move on for now.
Okay, that is all of the names I have for those pre-registered to speak. If you did not speak tonight, but still want to provide comments on the issuance of an air quality permit to Enviva Pellets Hamlet LLC, remember there are several ways to provide comments until the end of the comment period on June 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m. You can call 919-707-8714 and leave a voicemail message with your first and last name, whom you are representing, and state that your comments are related to Enviva Pellets Hamlet LLC. Or you can provide written comments until the comment period ends on June 30th, 2021. To provide written comments, please email them to daq.publiccomments@ncdenr.gov with envivaham.20b in the subject line. You can also mail written comments to the addresses listed in the public notice. Based on the information received during tonight's hearing and comments received throughout the comment period, I will make my recommendation to the Director of the Division of Air Quality for consideration in making his final decision on whether to issue the air quality permit to Enviva Pellets Hamlet LLC. Have we gotten in touch with Rachel yet?
Rachel, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry. My name is Rachel Velez, and I am a program director at Clean Water for North Carolina. We are urging DAQ to require stricter monitoring and reporting requirements for the Enviva Hamlet facility. Enviva is not a good neighbor, and they are not a trustworthy company. NC's 4 Enviva plants continue to violate the Clean Air Act, experience equipment failures, and fail to implement or comply with control measures. They only conceded to implement best available technologies to reduce VOC emissions at their Hamlet site when faced with a legal challenge. The draft permit, as outlined, is far too lax for controls, monitoring, and reporting requirements. For example, the permit states visible emissions shall not exceed 20% opacity when averaged over a 6-minute period, but 6-minute averaging periods can exceed the 20% opacity threshold once an hour, 5 times a day. Enviva can violate the visible emissions control 4 times a day, just as long as they don't exceed 87% opacity. On top of that, Enviva will only have to check on whether visible emissions are exceeding the 20% opacity control measure once a month. So there's really no telling if visible emissions are exceeding the 20% opacity over the 6-minute averaging periods, unless it's being checked on that one day out of the month. It is unclear how DAQ expects to enforce this or how Enviva expects to ensure they are in compliance with this rule. Results from this once-a-month visible emissions observation will be recorded in a logbook by Enviva and presented to DAQ only upon request. If DAQ doesn't request to review these emissions records throughout the year, then Enviva is only required to present a summary report of the monitoring and record-keeping activities twice annually. This leaves a lot of room for noncompliance throughout the year. PM emissions from the 8 dry hammer mills will be controlled by bag houses, but the structural integrity of the bag filters are only required to be inspected once annually by Enviva. In addition, PM emissions from the pellet mill feed silo, pellet cooler high pressure fines relay system, and from the finished product handling will be controlled by a bag house, which only also requires a once-a-year structural integrity inspection by Enviva. Again, unless otherwise requested by DAQ, Enviva only has to submit reports of monitoring and record-keeping activities to the agency twice annually. For time's sake, Clean Water for North Carolina will submit the remainder of our comments by the comment deadline. Given Enviva's horrendous track record of compliance, we urge DAQ to require much stronger monitoring and record-keeping regulations. Thank you, and thank you for helping me get on here. I appreciate it.
I believe Rahat. I believe that is that all of the people we have registered to call?
Yeah, I believe Robert Young would like to speak.
Okay. Please proceed.
Robert, your line has been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Robert Young, and I'm the Richmond County Chamber of Commerce Chair this year. And I also manage a large manufacturing facility in Richmond County. And I want to thank you all for allowing me to express my support of Enviva's Title V permit application for the facility in Hamlet, North Carolina. Enviva of Hamlet has been a chamber member and partner since the beginning of since their beginnings in Richmond County. They are widely known for their positive community participation and partnership in our community. They are truly great stewards of their facility and show a tremendous curb appeal to those passing by their facility. And I consider them great stewards of the property that they're on and its surrounding area. Enviva applied for and was successfully granted a construction permit from the state of North Carolina to install additional air emissions control technology at its Hamlet facility. The facility, which has been operating since 2019, continues to operate in compliance with all environmental regulations. Enviva has invested $160 million into the facility and provides 70 direct full-time jobs with competitive wages with a very positive economic impact on the community. Their higher wages have raised the standard for employers and has had an overall positive impact for employees. In addition to its mission to displace coal with renewable energy, Enviva is focused on continuous improvement in all the operations while playing a positive role in local community. Within Richmond County, Enviva's staff actively participates in sports outreach programs and projects identified by, or programs and projects identified by community partners on a continuous schedule. I encourage DEQ to grant this Title V permit and allow Enviva to still continue its positive impact on this community. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you all for your cooperation, attendance, and interest in the air quality permitting process. This public hearing is now adjourned.